1953, three scientists by the names of James Watson, Francis Crick, and Rosalind Franklin made one of the greatest discoveries of that time, the structure of DNA. While this news took the science world by storm, little did everyone know, even more amazing would be the understanding of its function. However, with this discovery, a greater question arose. How did this complex molecule come into existence in the first place? DNA, known as deoxyribonucleic acid, is a molecule found in the nucleus of every human cell. We are made up of tens of trillions of cells, and each one of those cells has DNA. It is popularly called the blueprint for life because of its important function. In the same way a blueprint is needed to know how to construct a building, this molecule contains all of our biological information that guides and controls the development of our bodies. Amazingly, the information found in each one of our cells is equivalent to 2 gigabytes of computer space. To better understand, let's compare it to just 2 gigabytes of space on your iPod. The average song is about 3.5 minutes. Depending on the song quality, 2 gigabytes is roughly 2,048 megabytes, which could store roughly 2,800 minutes. If converted to hours, we would have close to 47 hours of music. That's about 2 days of non-stop music. That is a lot of information. All of our genetic material, known as the human genome, in each one of our cells contains approximately 3 billion base pairs, composed of 4 letters that make up our genetic vocabulary: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, or we just simply use the letters A, T, G, C. These 4 letters are life's information storage material. The way we use letters in the alphabet to make words that are put together to make sentences, DNA is also ordered in a way that it has messages that code for specific proteins. For some time, it was believed that proteins contain the information needed to create and develop living things. But actually, it's DNA that has the genetic instructions for the making of these proteins that will then carry out important life functions. These proteins, tens of thousands of them, carry out these specific functions due to their specific shapes. If the DNA message is not in the correct sequence, the protein will not be structured the way that it should be in order to carry out its job successfully. For example, hemoglobin is a protein in your red blood cells that carries oxygen all throughout the body. If the gene in DNA for hemoglobin is mutated or changed in any way, then the body can have trouble moving oxygen throughout. An example of this disease is known as sickle cell anemia. If oxygen is not moved throughout the body, then our cells cannot get what it needs to continue to survive. To understand a bit of this process, let me quickly explain how proteins are made in the cell. I'll make this as quick and easy as possible, so just bear with me. I think it's important to know this so you can see that even though I will explain it simply, there is so much more detail that goes into making proteins. Protein synthesis is known as the central dogma of molecular biology. It's a two-step process known as transcription and translation. DNA is a large molecule, too large where it cannot leave the nucleus. Now, this may seem to be a problem since proteins are made in the cytoplasm of the cell. That's where transcription comes into play. This process takes a section of DNA that has specific information for the production of a particular protein, and it is then copied into a small, slightly different version of DNA known as mRNA. mRNA is small enough to leave the nucleus and go into the cytoplasm, where it will then meet with other ribosomes to complete the second step known as translation. mRNA is read by these other ribosomes to then make amino acids, the building blocks of proteins. These amino acids then begin to make bonds or form bonds with each other, and then once formed, they fold into an active protein ready to perform its function in the cell. What I just gave is a quick description, but this process is much more detailed and complicated. Naturalists, those who believe that only natural laws and forces operate the universe, claimed that DNA was created by natural forces that had plenty of time, like billions of years, to form itself and become the complex molecule we have today. Atheists declared that no intelligent source is needed to explain how DNA got here, let alone the message it carries. All we need to understand is that physical and chemical forces with enough time can create something from nothing. Think about this for a second. If you walk into a cafe and find a book lying on top of a table, is it reasonable to think that this book was created on its own by natural forces? Besides the paper and ink needed to create the book, could these letters have arranged randomly, created on their own, by chance, to give us a clear message that we can read and understand? Every book that has information has a mind that is responsible for creating that information, for placing that information where it is stored. It goes without saying that it would be foolish to think a book could just create itself, even if given billions of years and just the right amount of luck. Just as our words come from a mind and need to be ordered in a way that makes sense to convey an intelligible message, DNA needs to be ordered in a certain genetic sequence that will allow the proper translation of proteins. Without full functioning proteins, we would not have fully developed organisms, even less we wouldn't even have DNA. The implications behind the structure and function of DNA was enough to convince the well-known British philosopher Dr. Anthony Flew to leave behind his atheism to embrace the truth of an intelligent designer. In December 2004, he stated, "Superintelligence is the only good explanation for the origin of life and the complexity of nature." He was so convinced by DNA and other proofs that he even went as far as writing a book titled, "There is a God: How the World's Most Notorious Atheist Changed His Mind." This former atheist would go from debating and challenging believers about their faith to now letting others know that he was wrong all along. He admitted that the evidence is too strong to be ignored. Dr. Flew said, "I now believe there is a God. I now think the evidence, does point to a creative intelligence almost entirely because of the DNA investigations. What I think the DNA material has done is that it has shown by the almost unbelievable complexity of the arrangements which are needed to produce life that intelligence must have been involved in getting these extraordinarily diverse elements to work together." When looking at DNA in the body, we cannot escape the presence of intelligent design. DNA's design is one of many evidences that point directly to an intelligent designer. How amazing is it to know that this evidence itself is inside each and every one of our cells? If God is the designer of our bodies, then He can also be trusted to design the story of our lives. So the question that cannot be ignored is, could DNA have formed from natural, unguided forces by chance? Or is an intelligent designer responsible for its creation and message? What do you think? Thank you for watching this video. If you found it to be useful, please subscribe to this channel and press the like and notification buttons to receive more materials in the future. Also, don't forget to share this video with your family and friends. And remember, it's imperative to know the truth, defend the truth, and spread the truth. Until next time, blessings.